Okay, guys, you all know I'm super excited about this episode. Yes, my hands are going. Sharon, as you mentioned before we started, my good friend Herbie is here with us.
Hi,
Sharon.
Herbie.
I'm so glad you're here.
I'm glad to be here.
I knew you would be. If only our listeners knew what we went through to get Herbie on our schedule. I don't know about you two, but I feel really blessed and honored that he finally took the initiative and scheduled this interview.
I don't know how he did it, but he's here live in the chair across from me.
I'm sure he wanted to cancel a few times, but he didn't.
I know.
Kristina turned off his cancel button on his
I
schedule.
know. And in this episode, I'm not even going to talk about the text I got, but our listeners, I want you all to know that you're in for a real treat. Because when we say that we bring on experts, we have truly brought on an expert with many, many years of experience in the event business. And Herbie is going to share with us venue tips because he has a lot of experience with that. Herbie, before we start hammering away at questions, will you share just a little bit about your background and all of that fun stuff?
I will, and I'm here because you twisted my arm so far back.
We said we weren't going to mention that, Herbie.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you all for having me. I have been in the event business for a little over 37 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
See,
No, I
guys?
don't look that old. I know.
Sharon, I told you he had been doing it a long time.
That's a long
Did
time.
you start when you were 5?
4.
4, okay.
You look good.
Thanks. I started out, I was actually in retail management, and a friend of mine worked for a catering company who needed some extra help for a large function they were having. So I went into work one time, and one time turned into about 12 years
Wow.
of catering management. And then I left catering management and went into an event facility in Jeffersonville that you're probably all familiar with, known as Kai's, and I was the director there for a little over 10 years. And then after that, I was going to get out of the event business, and I got talked into staying into it, and now I'm with Huber's Orchard and Winery, and I handle all the weddings on the farm up there.
One of my favorite places.
So
Love you.
many questions. Let's go back. For those that are listening to us local, you will definitely know Kai's. You were there for a long time.
A long time.
Yes, a staple in the community, which is now still doing events, but called something else,
As the refinery, yes.
as the refinery.
My son actually got married at Kai's, so I think Herbie helped my son get married.
Yes.
We just didn't know each
We didn't
other.
know each other back then.
Yes, and then now, Herbie, I want to talk a little bit about, and Mike and Sharon, you're both very familiar with Huber's, and most of our local listeners should know of Huber's. But for those who don't, will you share just a little bit about it? Because it's not just an event venue.
No, it is Huber's Orchard, Winery, and Vineyards. We have about 750 acres where we have an event facility, we have a winery, we have a distillery, we have a farm market, we have a farm park, and lots of things growing.
You've done so well learning all of that, Herbie. I'm very proud of you.
I'm learning.
And amazing wine.
So if you're not from this area and you come to the Louisville, Kentucky area, Huber's definitely should be a stop. Now, Mike, are you ready to tap into his venue and event experience? And I know you've got some questions written down.
Well, I know we do a lot of events over there with Herbie and Huber's, and how do you handle the weather over there around Huber's? I mean, I know Sharon has said, that you're in a valley or a hill, or what do you call that?
We are on a hill, and our ceremony site is an outdoor space. So most of our ceremonies are outside, and weather can be tricky. I done my first wedding with Sharon a few months ago, and it happened to be a day where the weather just did not want to cooperate at all. About 5 minutes before the bride is supposed to walk down the aisle, we had a little storm that was blowing in, so we had to make a quick decision as to what we were going to do. And I gave Sharon some advice that a lot of times the storms come in and they go around us, and fortunately it did.
Praise God.
We
And
pulled it
Sharon's
off.
being a little silent over here, right?
That all translates to Herbie saved my butt because my bride absolutely wanted to get married outside, no question about it. She wanted to be outside. And I looked at the radar and the DJ looked at the radar and there was nothing but rain on the radar. And I went to tell the bride I was going to pull the wedding in. She was less than pleased. And Herbie said to me, honey, you'll be fine. You don't know the hill. And I thought, well, he's got more experience than me, so.
I rely on our
Okay.
farmers to look at that radar and that weather report, and they tell us if we can go outside or if we have to move inside.
And I'd be doggone, it didn't rain, not one drop.
That's
It
awesome.
went everywhere around us was rain, but it didn't rain. So hats off to you. Thank you for saving my rear end on wedding day.
But it doesn't always happen like that. A few weeks ago, just 3-4 weeks ago, weather reports all looked good. We had 20 minutes to pull it off. So we went ahead and went outside with the ceremony as soon as everybody got in their seat, and he welcomed everybody. The sky opened up and buckets.
So did you bring them back
wow.
in?
We all ran for the door as fast as possible, but we all looked like drowned rats by the time we got inside.
Oh.
When, I mean, from your years of experience, when a bride's looking for a venue and she does want an outdoor ceremony, what kind of things is she considering? What should she be asking that venue?
When you're looking at a venue with just an outdoor site for the ceremony like we have, you have to be willing to move inside if you have to, and know that it's not going to be that chapel type setup. Guests are going to be seated at their round tables in the reception room, and the ceremony is going to be in the reception room. That's the backup plan that we have. So you have to be open to that, and all of our brides are aware of that coming in, that, you know,
So
they want to be outside, but there is that slight chance it may not happen.
So they need to know that there's a plan B.
Correct.
That is a
Always
doable
a plan B.
plan B.
Well, I've got to say too, Plantation Hall is beautiful by itself anyway. So it's you've got a good option
Yeah.
for plan B.
Even our plan B is pretty good.
So we've talked about this before. Herbie, are there times that you recommend people out there, you know, and it's a lot easier to answer this if you know the venue, but I've even heard of plan C. You know, plan A might not work, plan B.
Plan B is not what they want, so let's try plan C. Yeah. There's always, and as Sharon knows, with weddings, everything can be last minute. We have to make last
We
minute
punt
decisions.
a lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I've got outdoor questions.
Mhm.
What should some couples think about from a venue standpoint with an outdoor wedding? Besides the weather.
Besides the weather, really not a lot besides the weather.
What about those cicadas?
We didn't have a problem with cicadas out
Oh
there.
Lord, I hate.
But for those that may be in an area where that
But if
could
you're
be an
in
issue.
an area where it could be an issue, yes. Fortunately, you know, being on a 750-acre farm, I think we were taken care of as far as the cicada problem. We didn't have any on the farm. We had no noise during any ceremonies.
Wow.
That's surprising.
We.
Very fortunate.
Yeah.
Which I think Kentucky must have had a bigger problem than Indiana.
The
did.
East End, because we didn't have any at our house.
Yeah, we had no issues. I had lots of brides calling me saying, hey, what are we going to do about these cicadas? And I'm like, no worry, we don't have any.
But that brings up a good point about noise. The surroundings of where your outdoor space is for your event.
Yeah, you definitely need to be aware of that. If the venue is near a highway, you're going to have road noise. That was an issue when I was at Kai's, and we had the courtyard where we'd done a lot of ceremonies in the courtyard, and 65 runs right beside Kai's. So you always have traffic noise there. An issue that we run into at Huber's every now and then, and it seems to happen quite often, is someone attending the wedding will end up setting off their car alarm during the wedding. So you have to be aware that there could be a car alarm going off during your ceremony.
I know we've talked a lot about rain, but something that, I mean, you know, I'm a big girl, and heat. You know, what about those July and August weddings? And I mean,
Heat can be a real issue. It gets very hot up there on the hill, and we're in direct sun. There's some trees around, but no shade over the pergola. So yes, it can get very hot. Fortunately, most of the ceremonies that we have up there that are outside, that aren't a church ceremony, are shorter, 10, 15 minutes. So you're not sitting out there long. We do allow the guests to stay inside, and we take them outside about 5 minutes before ceremony starts.
That's
so they're
awesome.
not sitting out there
That's
for
good.
an extended amount of time.
So maybe a plan for some place for your guests to be until ceremony
have
time.
a holding area that's cooler for your guests if you're doing an outside ceremony in July when it's going to be so hot.
Well, and something too there that older people could even actually stay inside and still watch the wedding.
Fortunately, the way we're set up, the end of the room is all glass, so you can stay inside and see everything and hear everything usually that's going on inside. Which
And on
works
those
out
hot
really well.
days, I do too. Get them in, get them a drink,
Yeah.
cool them off.
And when it's really hot, like in July, we do put a water station, bottled water, outside on the pergola so they can pick up water as they're walking.
I know my wedding there with you was on July 30th. I know that because it's my birthday and Herbie gave me a bottle of wine. But anyway, it was hotter than, it was.
80?
Yes.
Yes.
It was warm. What about, and Mike maybe can even speak to this, what about wind?
Well, I was going to mention that. I know I was up there a couple of weeks ago, and we did fabric and a chandelier and stuff, and the wind was blowing so crazy, but we just got done, and I said, I'm going to take some pictures, and the wind stopped. Within
I ordered that for you.
5 minutes. It stopped, but
Herbie
after
looked
I
up.
took those pictures, the wind was
Yeah,
Crazy.
there's always some wind up there. So whenever I have a couple who does want to do fabrics out there, I always let them know, make sure they're attached fairly well because you don't
Yeah, I
want to be in the middle of the ceremony and the fabric is in front of the officiant's
Yeah,
I think maybe
I was
you're like
zip
some
stripping
kind of weather
fabric.
wizard. Because you stopped the wind for Mike, you promised me that it would not rain in that one spot, even though there was rain all around us. I think you're like a weather
Yes,
wizard.
I can pull it off.
Is that
Most-
something in your back pocket that I didn't know about?
Yeah, I haven't told you about that, Kristina.
I feel left out. I feel left out.
So
Well,
if we're ever there again and any weather issues come up, you promise us that it will never happen.
No promises. No promises. But then you have to deal with other issues, like a lot of couples want to do a unity candle. It's impossible to
the
do a
wind.
unity candle outside most of the time.
that's
Are
a
you-
really good.
Yeah.
That's a really
Yeah, I
good
wouldn't
point.
have thought of that.
Are you still seeing a lot of that? Or are you seeing sand ceremonies, rope? They've got that new rope thing, and
There's so many different
I'm
ceremonies,
not,
but
Mike, I'm gonna say there's probably a title for that. Rope thing is probably not what it's
Hand
called.
fastening
Tying the knot.
ceremony.
What's it called?
It's a hand fastening ceremony.
I've
Thank
never heard
you
of-
there.
I've never
There's a
heard of
whole
that.
script that
I've
goes
never
with
heard of
it.
that.
Well, honey, that's
Well,
okay. I'll
Something
get you
about
a
tying the
place.
knot.
It's not tying the knot, Michael.
we see a lot
Thank
of,
you, Herbie.
Yeah, I'm cutting them off. We see a lot of wine ceremonies and bourbon ceremonies.
See, I think that'd be
Because
great
we're a
there.
winery and a distillery.
Okay, explain a little bit for our listeners if they don't know what.
The couple each chooses their favorite type of wine. I usually recommend doing a light and a dark wine. Those are blended together in one cup. Of course, I had trouble during COVID of letting them both drink out of the same cup, but those would be blended and they share the wine.
I didn't know if
that's
you
a
meant
good
like
idea.
bottled or I didn't know exactly where you were going with that. So
No,
a blended
I
drink.
have had a couple who wanted the actual bottles of wine out there, but most of the time I'll recommend they just do a carafe, and I have carafes that they can do, just a small form to pour. The bourbon ceremony can be done a few different ways. I had a couple not too long ago who brought in a small barrel that they each poured mash into and everything to produce the bourbon into that small barrel, and then they'll age it in their house for 4 to 5 years. And
That's
they drink it.
awesome.
That's amazing.
That's
Never heard of that.
Now, have you had couples do, and so for our listeners, we are located very close to Louisville, Kentucky, and Kentucky is bourbon country. So, one of the things that I have couples want to do a lot is bury the bottle of bourbon at your ceremony site, and you dig it up on wedding day, and that's supposed to keep the rain away.
Yes. it
Have
is.
you had couples do that before?
I have not.
I've had, yeah.
During my time at Huber's, which I've been there a little over 2 years now, I have not had that. But I do have a friend who got married there several years ago, and I just found out a few months ago that her and her now husband went to Huber's and buried a
Yeah.
bottle of bourbon in the orchard.
Yeah.
And
And you dig it up on
they
wedding
didn't have
day.
rain on their wedding day. Yeah.
It's kind
So
of an
what
old
do they
wives'
do? Have a
tale.
little tombstone there with it, or?
No, you
No,
just
they
have
just
to remember
remember
where
and-
you put it.
You know, we don't want to know that you're coming out to the farm to bury a bottle of bourbon.
Places that are historical gardens or botanical gardens won't tell you how I know, but they frown on that, digging up and burying bourbon. So
I was gonna say, Kim, let's do a disclaimer
it
here,
has to
Herbie.
be a secret.
This is not something that necessarily places allow you to do.
Correct.
We do recommend, if this is something you're interested in doing, that you do ask about that.
Come and talk to me and we can figure something.
Okay, if you're having it at Huber's, but just a disclaimer out there for those listening, we are not saying this is something that we endorse that you
Don't
do that is
go to
a.
your venue and bury a bottle of bourbon.
Thank you, Herbie. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thanks for
That's-
covering our butt there,
that-
Kristina.
No problem. That's what I'm here
Hey, if
for.
it keeps the rain away.
I'll let you and Herbie have that conversation. Me and Mike are out. Okay, so we talked about outside. Is there anything, Herbie, with seating outside at weddings or anything like that that comes to mind as far as tips or anything like that?
Yes. I mean, if you're doing an outdoor venue, other than Huber's, if you come to me, I'm going to take care of everything for you. But if you're doing an outdoor venue, some outdoor venues, you do have to arrange your own seating. So you would have to have rental and all of that. Hopefully, if you're doing that, you've got somebody like Sharon that can handle all of that.
That's a really, it not always at venues does it come with
Right.
that stuff.
Yeah. Some venues do not include, you get the room and then you build everything from there.
One thing that I just had a discussion with the bride recently is when you rent your chairs for your ceremony, because like Herbie said, a lot of places you have to rent your chairs. They don't understand that those chairs, they don't understand why they have to also rent chairs for the reception. They don't understand why they can't just repurpose those same chairs. But the thing that they don't take into consideration, you've got 200 or 300 chairs, who's moving them
In a small window of time.
in about 15
Yes.
minutes?
Right.
Yes.
I hate that.
So what I usually suggest is most chair companies, I just did it recently, for $1 or $2 a chair, they will stay on site and move the chairs for you. So that's something you definitely want to add on if you have to rent.
And Herbie, so it's probably a good idea to make sure that's on your list of questions for venues. What comes with
What's included
your rental
and how many
and how long?
Yeah.
How long do you get?
and how long do you get? We can seat up to 300 outside on the pergola for a ceremony. We do have standing room over that 300. If you're over the 300 count, there's room for roughly 400 for an outdoor ceremony with standing room.
Wow.
So,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
so Herbie, venue coordinator, that's what you actually are for Huber's?
Yes, I handle all the weddings on the farm, so my kind of title is wedding coordinator, event manager, wedding, specializing in weddings.
So basically, if a bride comes to you, we just did an episode on this not long ago, doing the difference between venue coordinators, day of planning, and so on. So if Sharon is at your venue and you're the coordinator there, you all just work together? Is there certain things that you take care of compared to what Sharon would take care of, or vice versa?
I'm listening to Herbie.
Yes, we work together, and I kind of leave it up to the outside coordinators, such as when Sharon done the wedding there, as to how involved they want me to be. Especially if the ceremony is off property at a church or somewhere, then the coordinator that they've hired outside is going to handle more than I'm going to handle. And you know, it's just work together, and whatever you need me to do, whatever I need you to do.
And Herbie, so for people listening, an event coordinator, your responsibility lies with the venue,
Correct.
whereas a planner is more team couple.
Yeah, they are wherever the couple's at the hotel, at the church, at the venue, at the
But
rehearsal.
it is such a team because, you know, Herbie, when I go to Huber, say, he is the expert on that space. So do I want to create a floor plan when this is my first wedding I've ever done there? Or do I want to let the person who's in that space every weekend tell me where things should go? That's a no-brainer to me. You know, when he told me about the weather, I was like, he practically lives here. I've never been here. I'm going to listen to him. Like it has to be a team.
That is an example of a good wedding planner. Let the person who knows the venue tell you what the best flow is.
Right.
The reception is going to turn out much nicer if everything's set up that works the best way.
Yeah. I mean, I think any good wedding planner, our job is to, like I've said before, put our best team together that we can find, and then you let the experts be the experts.
Right.
And, so I definitely, when I'm at a venue, the venue coordinator is invaluable to me. Like,
So Herbie, when someone comes to you, what are some top questions that they ask you if they're inquiring about renting the facility?
what should they ask you?
And what should they ask you?
Well, the top question, which I always tell my couples, is check out the restrooms. You want to know that there's going to be adequate restroom space. If you're having 200, 300, 400 guests, you don't want a venue that has one stall in each restroom.
Wow.
And
That's
I
a
always
good
actually,
tip.
when
That
I
is a
do
good tip.
when I do a venue visit, I love that he said that. I always go to the restroom because I want to know that it's clean. I want to know if trash is overflowing. I want to know if it's all icky and gross or, so I totally agree. I check the bathrooms every venue visit I do.
And then you want to know minimum and maximum capacity. Maximum is great to know because you don't want to go over capacity, but yet if you think you may have 200 people at your wedding and your final count comes in at 90, is that space going to be too big?
Is it going to look empty?
Yeah, what can you do to make that small of amount work in that room? And we can make it work. There's ways of making a smaller reception fill up a large room.
Okay, and what else do people ask you, or what do you recommend that they ask?
Oh, that's a tough one. You put me
I'm
on the
putting you on
spot.
the spot.
I don't like these questions like that, Kristina.
Well, Sharon, you go on these tours too.
I always want to know the hours that we have available.
Good one.
Good one.
See, I didn't think of that because
Well,
I told you she had your back.
What time can I get him to decorate?
Yeah. I always want to know the hours because some venues, they only allow you like 2 hours before your event begins.
right.
So if I have a DJ that's setting up a cocktail hour system, a ceremony system, and a reception system in 3 different spaces, that's not going to work.
2 hours is not a lot.
And do
Not
they
a lot.
offer you to purchase more?
Well, and that's the thing that's why it's important to ask because some venues, it's more of an all-day access or at least maybe a 10, 12-hour access. Some venues you get that 2 hours and then for an extra amount of money, you can get more hours. So I think that's important to ask, and I also think it's important to ask how much time you get to break down.
To break down and get out, yeah.
I had a wedding recently that was a huge issue because the DJ took more than an hour to break down, and it can become a huge.
Yeah.
Because then
Yeah.
the venue coordinator's stuck there, and I'm stuck there, and
Very much, yeah.
And there could be additional charges for
Yeah.
going over that
there
time
will
frame.
be additional.
Yeah, there will be
charges.
additional charges
Yeah.
if you're over a certain time.
I think another question too is the breakdown and cleanup. Like, are you required to take out the trash? Are you required?
How much are you involved is a good question, which with us at Hubers, take out what you want to keep, anything you don't want to keep, anything's trash, we take care of.
That's awesome.
See, I think that's great. I don't think the bride and groom should be, and the parents should be in charge of hauling the trash out.
No.
I think that's a good service.
So, Herbie, another thing too is with venues, what do you recommend for a time frame? Especially we're coming out of COVID. I'd like to say that we're completely out of it. I hope we're getting
Hopefully.
close. But what do you recommend for time frames? How soon?
As far as booking a venue, I used to say about a year out is what we book weddings. Now I'm recommending about a year and a half to get a date. Dates are hard to come by right now, and a lot of it due to the COVID situation.
Well, and I've heard Sharon mention a couple times, don't get your heart set on a date. Especially if you have a certain place that you want, don't get your heart set on it.
Be open to other dates, be open to not having a Saturday, possibly moving to a Friday, possibly moving to a Sunday.
But what we've mentioned before is contact your venue and see what dates they're available. Maybe pick the month and then ask you, what days do you have available in October?
I always
So,
tell my clients, you can get your heart set on a date or you can get your heart set on a venue, but probably not both.
Right.
Because that you have to be, if you know you want Huber's, then we have to call Herbie and we have to say, this is our number one choice, this is number two and number three.
And if you want Huber's and you want a fall wedding, September, October, book that early. Because
Yes.
that's what everybody wants.
That's our busiest time over there.
Yeah.
September and October.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. And I think too, Sharon, you have really talked in the past about several things in regards to venues, but I love that you pointed out how the details of asking, like about the bathrooms, and even Herbie mentioned that too. That's some things that people that are not, they're just engaged. They don't think about going to a venue and checking out the restrooms or, there's so much other stuff than just food, number of people that can be in a place, all that
You
stuff.
have to check out parking, access.
For
If you
sure.
have grandparents in wheelchairs or walkers, are they going to be able to get into the building easily?
Can they use the is it handicap
Is it
accessible
handicap
restroom?
accessible? If you're bringing in 200 or 300 guests and your venue is on a second floor, an upper floor, how many elevators are there? How many people can you get up at a time? And that was difficult, I know, with other venues during COVID because elevators were limited to on how many people could use them. So I'm sure that Sharon dealt with that problem a little
A
bit.
little bit.
Well, the parking situation, I've heard that mentioned at, other venues that are located in very popular areas or things like that where it's not a large parking lot like you have, that can be a concern, especially older guests. If your guests, a lot of them are older and are going to have to walk pretty far, not even handicap
Right.
accessible.
Something else that is always huge to my clients is also your vendor policy. Are they limited on what vendors they can use? Because some venues give you a list and there might be 3 caterers on that list and you can only use one of those caterers. So it doesn't really matter. Maybe you're getting married on a Sunday and you got your venue for half price. That's a great deal. But if all 3 of those preferred caterers are out of your budget, you're still in trouble.
You're still, yeah.
So I think knowing those policies, can you pick any DJ you want, any florist you want? I think those things are important.
And while we're talking about that, Herbie, you want to touch on a little bit of Huber's for those that might be interested, what the policies are there?
At Huber's, we have our own in-house catering. We
And
have
it is
a-
good.
a property, thank you.
I thought for sure he'd bring us some of that today.
He brought us
Hey, he
wine.
brought us wine.
I know.
Don't complain.
Oh, I'm not.
I'll take the wine.
I mean, really?
I can cook, but I can't make wine, so.
I made biscuits and apple pie.
As far as other vendors, we do have 3 in-house DJs on our list, but you can actually bring in any DJ you wish. We do have a small fee for bringing in an outside DJ, but you can bring in any DJ. Any florist is allowed, and I'm always happy to see Mike pull up at the front door.
It's comforting, isn't it? It comforts me
is.
too. Yeah.
Well, that's always good to know. And Sharon, just like you mentioned, they may have their heart set on a certain vendor. But if they have a lockdown vendor policy, that venue may not work for them.
Yeah, it's actually, it's a concern.
So many questions can be answered, and I know you help them when they have a wedding planner, but knowing that information ahead of time before you make a trip somewhere that you are set on a date or you're set on other vendors can make a big difference. It can save you a trip.
Absolutely.
I think something else too that comes up is the rules. There are some venues, no sparklers allowed. I don't know what your rule is. There, no confetti, no live rose petals.
Sharon, we do not allow sparklers or anything with fire.
I wouldn't sneak
But
and do
it's because
sparklers.
we're sitting in the middle of an orchard in a
Right.
vineyard, so we
I
don't
mean, I
have
might
any-
sneak and
any
bury the
fire.
bourbon, but I would not sneak and do sparklers.
I tell you what, can't take her anywhere, Herbie, can you?
I'm a hot mess. I'm sorry.
The
No,
one
but-
thing I like about Huber's, though, for we're going back to your parking and stuff, it's one of the easiest venues that I ever go
So
to.
easy.
That you can pull up right to the door, unload my vans, and we can be in and out of there very quickly.
Yeah.
And I mean, even for the guest parking, it's all flat. I mean, it's
And
perfect
then
way to get in and out.
After you're set up, you can walk over to the winery patio.
And we've done
have
that.
a drink.
We've done that.
Well, I was not even thinking about guests or vendors, honestly, for your wedding party. You can pull right up in whatever transportation, no matter what kind of shoes you have on, all that kind of stuff. It's really easy. And I really love how you can be introduced in there. There's so many different options, but that makes it's nice when it's convenient for everyone involved.
Yes.
What about a space for that bridal party, speaking of, to get ready?
We do have what we call the bridal house, which you're very familiar with. You spent several hours in there.
Hours and hours.
Which
yeah.
is right out in front of the winery and Plantation Hall, our event space. And it's an old farmhouse. It's been there for several years, and we've converted it into a bridal house, and there's room in the house for the bride and groom and the bridal party all to get ready. There's a kitchen, a dining room, refrigerator that's stocked with bottled water.
It's awesome.
They can bring in snack food. They can order food from the winery and bring over. They can get alcohol from the winery and bring over. It's very convenient.
It's very nice.
I'm still sitting here wondering why we didn't record the podcast there.
And as a planner, that's golden to me because I don't have to have transportation. I don't have to get a hotel room for them to get ready. So having some place that is the same place as my ceremony and reception to get ready is a huge plus to me. That's always, when I go look at a venue, that's always something I'm scoping out, like where could we get ready and how far is it and how long is it gonna take? So, yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, and then we walk straight across to the ceremony area when it's time to get married. I take them over about 20 minutes before, line them up, and then start the ceremony.
Unless you have a planner involved.
And then she's in the bridal house panicking because of the weather.
100% I was, not even gonna lie.
You know, I know we've got lots of listeners all over the place, and I think this would be a perfect destination wedding for people away from
For sure.
Louisville or, you know, Kentuckiana, because I mean the facility is absolutely beautiful. The grounds, you can
So
pick your
much to do.
strawberries, you can pick your peaches,
And
you
Herbie's
can
there.
pick your pumpkins. Yeah,
But honestly, you can have lunch, dinner, wine. I mean, there's so much for everyone to do.
My grandson is too, and we've actually taken him there. They have because everything we've talked about is adult, but they
It
have
is.
the cutest little park. You know, what's it called?
The farm park.
The farm park. It's so much fun. I mean, there's something for everybody to do there for sure.
Absolutely. We also, it's very nice. We have a lot of weddings where they may get married in the church, but it has to be earlier in the day, and they want an evening reception. So there might be an hour or two between ceremony and reception. Their guests
Yeah.
can come and grab a drink at the winery, sit on the patio, listen to music, and then come into the reception.
That's I'm glad that Herbie mentioned that because Sharon, I know churches, you can't go past a certain time, especially if they have regular services.
Yes,
A lot of Catholic churches, 2:30 is the latest.
it's the
you can
latest.
get
Yeah.
married.
And if you really want an evening reception, that's a really good point.
well, there's a little church just right down the street from you all. I can't remember the name of it, but it's the cutest little chapel type. I know I'm doing a wedding there in January,
Yes.
and it's beautiful. I mean, I don't know if they rent that out or you have to be a member there, but I don't know if you all work together.
They do rent it out. I've sent a few couples down there. Yeah.
It's cute, very cute.
All right, Sharon, come on, put him in the hot seat. I know we've got some other questions for him.
Oh my gosh.
I know you really like being nice to Herbie, but
I love her.
are we ready for our rapid fire questions that he doesn't know anything about?
Oh, jeez.
Okay, let's do it.
Really? Okay, Herbie.
You have to say the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay, you're at a reception.
Be ready on that mute button.
No, sir,
10 second delay.
we've made it all the way through. Absolutely not. Okay, you're at a reception. Do you run towards the dance floor or do you run away? You can go ahead and
I
say,
can guess.
That's a difficult one.
depends on how much you've had
Depends
to
on
drink.
the bit bar
And
first.
you know, if I'm working,
No,
I'm going to run for the door. If I'm a guest, I'm going to run for the dance floor.
okay, all right, dance floor it is. I mean,
Okay, Herbie. You're not allowed to answer your family or your friends because that's a given. What do you absolutely love and cannot live without?
besides bourbon.
You're not, not bourbon, because we all already know that.
I took that answer from him.
Okay, We'll go with the next thing from bourbon, casinos.
Really?
Yeah.
What's your favorite?
Favorite casino? French Lick.
Love it.
Yes.
And not just the gambling there. French Lick is a great place.
We're actually all going to be there in November for the Association of Bridal Consultants National Conference.
Oh, invite me up. I'll come have a drink with you.
Honey, consider it an
Come
invite.
on.
Consider it an invite.
November
We're gonna
1st and 2nd. Make
Alright.
sure you put it on your calendar. Okay. You can't just answer bourbon. Your favorite, Mike, don't be looking at me. You're the last question. I'm just filling in for you. You gotta come up with a question
Go
for
ahead.
him.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm not going to embarrass you.
Favorite drink. You cannot say bourbon.
I won't say bourbon, but the only thing I drink other than bourbon is water.
Bourbon and water.
No. Just water. I don't do soft drinks.
Tea,
No.
No.
wine,
Either water or bourbon and water.
no
And,
wine.
and in the video, Herbie has a bottle of water and a glass.
And a
sitting
glass
next to it.
of, wonder what's in the glass.
Right. Okay, Mike, you
Okay,
get the
Herbie.
final question.
So,
Make it a difficult one.
you're at a lot of weddings.
Yes.
Do you always taste the cake?
No.
Never?
Hardly ever. I'm not a sweets person. I will eat the chips and queso and the chips and dip over the cake.
I'll be done.
Surprise, surprise. Did you
Yeah,
think it was
I
something?
honestly can't remember the last time that I ate a piece of wedding cake. It's
I
been-
can't, it was Sunday.
See, I want a piece all the time.
No.
Well, Mike, I encourage you to listen to one of our past episodes called Cake Tape. You can get your fix on that. Okay, Herbie, thank you so much for taking time. And you said we wouldn't last 5 minutes, and we sure have. So, where can they find out more information about Huber's?
Go to huberwinery.com or plantationhall.com. My email is on both. Give me a call, shoot me an email.
Find you on social media.
Find me on social media.
Find Huber's on social media.
Or if you want to just find Herbie.
You can find him on there as well.
Find me.
Maybe. All right, we really appreciate. I know we had to twist your arm. You did a great job. You said that you weren't going to be able to talk. You exceeded any expectations
And you
we
did
could
not
have.
die.
You did amazing.
Right.
I have to say the three of you made this very easy.
Aww.
Aww.
I've been sweating it for about 2 weeks, and as Kristina knows,
I've received messages almost daily.
almost canceled.
Yes.
We're not as scary as we look.
Okay, well, we hope that you found this helpful with some venue information. He did so good. Someone had to mess up at some point in time, and
He was
you know,
like- he
Mike.
He was right on it, though.
Mike is usually the one that does Sharon, so I took it. I took it for the team.
What?
It's all good.
We love you, precious one.
Yes.
Precious
Okay.
lamb, my bud.
All right. Make sure to look up Huber's, and thank you, Herbie, for sharing your knowledge and tips with all the listeners. Until next time, everyone stay safe.